Welcome back to Game Discussion Video Gamers. It has been a while since I made this kind of video, but since Monster Hunter Sunbreak is coming soon, I'm just that excited to discuss more about Monster Hunter and how the franchise is going to keep growing in the future. With the coming of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak along with its future DLC support, probably until next year, people can't help but wonder how is the next big mainline Monster Hunter going to be, which is probably going to be Monster Hunter World 2, especially after the developers have learned so much on how to spice Monster Hunter games to make it more appealing to many people after both Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise. I'm just not talking about gameplay wise, but many people are so excited for the next mainline Monster Hunter game after Capcom uses the RE engine to produce their games, which can be seen from Monster Hunter Rise despite having the hardware limitation with Nintendo Switch. What I really want to discuss today is that considering there are so many monsters from old games that has been brought to World and Rise, and with only few that hasn't received the next generation treatment, we can't help but wonder how they're going to surprise the players without having new monsters, since showing monsters from Monster Hunter World and Rise will not have the same impacts when they're revealing their new game for the next gen consoles, which most likely again Monster Hunter World 2. Personally, I think the best way to excite the fans without having to design so many new monsters is by using some of the assets from Monster Hunter Frontier and Monster Hunter Online. Because there's so many fantastic monsters that are available in that game, even though some of them might be way too exaggerated, probably due to their coloring and very anime-like design. But other than that, I think there are so many monsters that could fit to the mainline series. Just for a brief introduction to Frontier for those who don't know, it's an online Monster Hunter games that only available in Japan, Korea, and China, and there tends to be treated separately from the mainline Monster Hunter. But there are two monsters that appear in Monster Hunter Freedom Unite that was originally from the Monster Hunter Frontier, with one of them being Lavasioth. In this video, I'm going to show my top 10 picks for Frontier monsters that should appear in the future Monster Hunter series, excluding the Elder Dragon, as I will make separate videos for them. Most of the monsters' names in Frontier are so difficult to pronounce, so please bear with me in how I'm going to butcher those names. Additionally, I will try also to show some of the gears of the specific monsters if I'm able to find them, so that you hunters know what to expect from the aesthetics in terms of gear from these monsters. Before going to the video, do leave a like in this video and subscribe to my channel for more video game content, especially game discussions, or something like the current running series, The Fashion Lord for Elden Ring. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Number 1. Ray Golgarth and Lola Golgarth. I'm starting this list with one of the best monsters in Frontier in my opinion, not just in terms of design, but also the mechanics because they always stick together as a pair, able to make some combination attacks, which really reminds me on how Lunastra and Teostra were back in Monster Hunter World with their union attack. One of the interesting mechanics that I found from my research is that they'll always tend to stick together, as I mentioned before. For instance, if Lola Golgarth is trapped, Ray Golgarth will try to get the other one out of the trap. So we have to be careful with the timing of the trap usage in this case. Additionally, apparently there is a system where if you KO one of the Golgarth, it will start to attack its partner until they will be forced out of the KO state. One of my complaints with Monster Hunter Rise is that most of the hunter tends to be very easy outside the LCA Apex quests, and Monster Hunter Rise makes the hunter seems very powerful at all times. I think that this can be balanced with having monsters like these two working together to defeat the hunters instead of fighting against each other all the time, which I think can be extended into the future Monster Hunter games, not just with special monsters like these two. Number 2. Espinas. Now, this is a monster that can be called a flagship of Frontier, and I believe it has to be included into the future Monster Hunter games if they try to bring any of the Frontier monsters into the next-gen games. Well, this monster is more than just a Rathian-looking monster. Aside having a fireball that inflicts poison and paralysis at the same time, apparently it has a unique behavior that it is not that interested with hunters unless the hunter deals enough damage to him. I think this can be an interesting mechanics as the opposite of always angry Devil Joe, Betelgeuse, or Rajang. We have a passive monster that is not willing to fight or maybe tends to run away, and the hunter's job would be to make sure that the monster is enraged enough that it's willing to fight us. Maybe even make the monster to be one of the craziest monster ever existed. And for additional mechanics, maybe if the wyvern riding system will be included into the future games, they can make monster like Espinas to be very difficult to be ridden. So the hunters cannot exploit the wyvern riding too much, just like how in Rise many hunters are using another monster to deal as much damage as possible at the beginning of the hunt. Since for me, Monster Hunter is more than just an action game that requires you to press button and learning the monsters. It's more than just that. By having each monsters unique and have their own identity. Number 3. Sakura Fashimo, which I've heard before it has another name called Akala. This is one of my personal favorite of mine for Frontier monsters due to the fact that it is an effing scorpion and how menacing it looks. Not only it does look different from other Paravision monsters such as the well-known crab Daimyo, Hermitor, and Shogun Senator, but it also has such a cool color scheme along the crystals around its body. Imagine seeing this monster in RE Engine and fighting them in a rather dark area. I think it can be a rather spooky monster to fight too, just like Keizu, but in a different way. The way you need to fight the monster is very unique as well if you try to maximize the reward, as you need to watch for the blood color as you attack and destroy body parts because it will dictate its attack pattern and also signifies when you are able to cut its tail, which is the most precious part that you need to destroy in order to get their rarest material. Also, if you're not fast enough, it could grow some of its body parts back and prevent you from cutting its tail before end up killing it, since apparently it is very difficult to cut its tail. Honestly, this is kind of gameplay element I really miss from older Monster Hunters, where you need to work hard to get the monster part that you are looking for, instead of beating the crap out of monsters like what the modern monsters are going towards. Just like back in the day for me, it was really difficult to destroy Apex Rajang's horn because its face is so small and it's very difficult to hit it with the way its movesets were. If the developers have any plan to bring any monster from Frontier, I think this monster is a good start to test it out because I think many people would enjoy this new change of pace with what kind of monsters that they're going to hunt. Number 4. Kamu Orogaron and Nono Orogaron, which I will address them as the Orogaron duo instead. Another monster that will appear as a duo, where Kamu is the male while the Nono is the female. Just like the Golgarth duo, they should have the union attack just like what Teosha and Lestra had back in Monster Hunter World, but since they're always stuck together, there should be some variations to it, outside of really big attacks, like maybe coordinating their normal attacks, so you will have a more difficult time in deciding when to attack and when to defend yourselves. Additionally, the reason why I have chosen them as my top 10 is because it is the only fang beast species that are like wolves, while the majority of other fang beasts tends to be ape/monkey-like with few exceptions. Well, some might argue it might be so similar to Orogaron from World, but Orogaron is a fang wyvern, just like Zinogre. Plus, Orogaron is way bigger than the two Orogaron. It will be interesting to fight these two since they are smaller than Orogaron while probably having the same agility, as our attack will tend to miss, especially if you're using big weapons like Great Sword or sometimes Switch Axe or Charge Blade. Well, let's just hope they don't end up making it as annoying as Kirin, like how it was back in Monster Hunter World. Number 5. Beric Yorosu. Despite its being a flying wyvern, its body structure is slightly different, especially around the wings that look like a whip with a hook. From what I know, this monster tends to stay airborne, which kinda reminds me of Legiana from Monster Hunter World, and also it has electricity as its main element. From what I've researched, that it doesn't do many crazy things with its whip in Monster Hunter Frontier, but I think modern Monster Hunter could make some very interesting attacks. Maybe make it like Unga Bunga, like Scorpion from Mortal Kombat Get Over Here attack that drags the hunter in and wombo combo you into the air or something. And also make it as a being that is specialized in air combat, since with the wirebite system, And if they decided to carry that system along to the next Monster Hunter game, I think the issue with airborne monster should not be a big of a problem, and maybe make it a unique vibrant riding that always stays in the airborne, which I think can be a very interesting change of pace. Number 6. Poboru Barumo. I think this is one of the most chaotic looking monsters, with how he looks like a nibble Snarf with a very tiny pair of wings, which apparently it has a mechanics is about buffing itself through dance depending on which part of its body that's going to dance with, and also if the dance is successful, it is able to regenerate its body parts, which is quite a rare thing that could happen on our monsters, which also mean that tons of materials for the hunters, I knew. But even if we fail to stagger it to prevent it from buffing itself, but if we are near it, apparently we will also receive the buffs. So it is up to you if you need those buffs or you don't want this monster to be more annoying than it already is. I really like this element of the monsters, where having a build that allows for more stagger or KO will reward the player by having a slightly easier fight. Additionally, just like Nibble Snarf is able to burrow to the ground, but does not try to eat everything like Nibble Snarf, which I think they should include if this could ever make it into the future Monster Hunter games, so we can make some bomb shenanigans like what we did to Nibble Snarf like in Ultimate Monster Hunter. Number 7. Hypno or Torrid class. Well, the full name is actually Hypnocatrice, but I like to shorten it as Hypno. Hypno gets this spot because this monster did get an appearance in Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, having the one of the two monsters from Frontier to appear in the mainline series, while the other one being Lavasion, just like I mentioned previously. Alongside Akala, I think this is a good monster to start with because its history in Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, and if its return is received well, maybe there's a big chance that the other monsters will follow suit and make their debut in the mainline series. I'm also interested in Torrid class because it looks like a boss monster for a bird wyvern, and most of the bird wyvern that we encounter tends to be an early game to mid game monster, and having it as a late game boss will be another nice change of game flow, since we always get Elder Dragons as the endgame bosses. If Hypno can't make it into the game because it looks too simple, I don't mind if they choose Torrid class instead. Number 8. Pokarado. I choose this monster because it is a freaking sea lion or a walrus, and most of the Leviathan monsters are lizard looking, and having something that is mammal looking is quite a good change of pace. In terms of mechanics, there's nothing special about it unfortunately, and seems most of its attacks are very similar to Royal Ludroth. But with the latest console technology, I think the developers can make some interesting environmental interactions, maybe such as diving into ice waters or even eat fishes to get specific buffs. For instance, maybe if they eat bomb arowana, they can cause some explosions. Or maybe wet fish, it could have its fang sharpened or something. I'm pretty sure there's so many interesting mechanics that can be done with this monster. Since for me, if you want to make a monster to be interesting, it has to be as interesting as Glavenus. Number 9. Baru Ragaru. Another Leviathan monster from Frontier. I chose this one because the design is not too exaggerated and it can fit well with the mainline Monster Hunter, I suppose, because especially it really reminds me of classic Leviathan from many mythologies. Apparently it has a unique mechanics where it is able to make use of status elements based off its recent prey. For example, if it attacks something like Eo prey, it will be able to use poison-based attack. If it's Gen prey, it could use paralysis, and apparently blood-based if it's managed to pin the hunter, or non-element/element monsters as its prey. This can cause some challenges for the hunters to adjust the way they fight depending on the elements that it will cause, such as bringing more antidotes or get ready to knock your teammates out of the paralysis. Heck, if they decide to put bleed on this monster too, at least now Seregios is not lonely anymore. The anteater looking tongue will allow for some fun sniping against a very far away hunter and catch them off guard, which can be a very good WTF moment in some scenarios. Additionally, I looked up the gears for this monster. It has a very sea-themed ancient civilization, which I really appreciate. Number 10. Odiba Torasu. Let's end this list with a gigantic monster that is not an Elder Dragon. I choose this monster specifically because it is very similar to other two gigantic monsters like Akantor that are always in the volcano region and Ukanlos in the Arctic region. To make the pronunciation easy, I will call him Odiba. Odiba will be available in the desert region, and if it's able to appear in mainland Monster Hunter along with the other two, I think they could make up into a very iconic trio gigantic non-elder dragon monsters. Apparently it's very good at digging, so if it can do the Diablo's attack but with a larger AoE, the hunters needs to dodge by going far away from it, or Superman dive it, or staying mid-air like using wire bugs, which will force the hunter to be more defensive instead of spamming attacks at all times. Additionally, it will be nice if these three monsters have the same triangle mechanics like Teostra, Leora, and Chameleos, where using one of the other gear will make the hunt a bit easier for those who are annoyed with their mechanics, which I really like since it adds so much immersion to the game itself. I did mention 10 monsters, but I have some monsters that I would like to give honorable mentions due to the fact that they are just freaking cool, but they are like a boss version monster from Frontier, and I don't mind having them as substitute of the other version. Number 1, Orogaron. This is like the boss monster of the Orogaron duo. The red first gives such a strong monster vibes, and apparently it's a lone Kamu Orogaron that evolved from being away from the packs. It will be amazing if this monster gets a special arena like a huge savannah, and makes the fight like Unga Bunga like Raging Brachydius was in the Monster Hunter world. And second monster is Zena Serisu. This monster is like the boss version of Beric Yorosu, and looks so much cooler due to the full black color. I think if this monster should come out, they should make this fight purely a night battle in a dark cave, since apparently this monster was designed based on bats. That's all of the monsters from Frontier that I think should be put in the future mainline Monster Hunter. There are so many monsters in Frontier series, including the Zenith species and something like the Burst species. As you guys can see, most of the monsters that I've chosen feel that they could fit quite well with the mainline Monster Hunter series. There are some really cool monsters from Frontier series, but it feels so out of place if they're included into the main series. Mainly the Origin and Burst species and some of the Zenith ones, which is why I have excluded them from this list. But who knows, they might appear one day in Monster Hunter series if many fans desire them. We never know if the developers are listening to us. I don't know if there are any asset ownership issues regarding the Frontier monsters, but if there's no problem with the assets, these monsters that I've included would be some amazing addition to the Monster Hunter series overall, moving forward, as this franchise will only grow bigger from now on. Well, that's the list. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and maybe if many people know about this and wish it for it to happen, who knows, the developer might listen to it and bring these monsters to the mainline series. Thank you so much for watching, Hunters. Please do smash that like button and subscribe button. It will really help a lot for me to keep making content like this discussion video or other video games related content, just like my current Fashion Lord / Elden Bling series for Elden Ring. Until the next video, stay sharp, Hunters.